If I ever choose a Luna, it will never be Emma Hayes. The words reached her before she saw the man who spoke them. Emma froze beside the open archway of Blackwood Hall, a silver tray balanced carefully in her hands. Beyond the carved oak doors, laughter drifted through the evening air. Warm golden light spilled across polished marble floors, and the scent of pinewood candles mixed with expensive wine. She had only come to deliver refreshments for the council gathering. She had never meant to hear the conversation that would quietly break her heart. Alpha Ethan Blackwood stood near the grand fireplace, one hand resting on the stone mantel. At 28, he was already the most respected alpha in the Northern Territories. Tall, confident, and calm under pressure, he carried the kind of presence that naturally drew every eye in a room. Tonight was no different. Several elders surrounded him, discussing preparations for the upcoming Moon Festival. "You'll have to choose a Luna eventually," one elder said with a knowing smile. "Half the territory is already making predictions." Ethan chuckled softly. "Then they're probably predicting Olivia Hayes." The group laughed in agreement. Emma lowered her gaze. She already knew where this was going. Everyone did. Olivia was her older sister. Beautiful, charming, admired wherever she went. While Olivia seemed to shine beneath every spotlight, Emma had spent most of her life blending into the background. "And Emma?" another elder asked casually. Ethan's expression never turned cruel. In some ways that made it worse. He simply looked surprised by the suggestion. "Emma," he repeated. "She's kind, thoughtful. But if I ever choose a Luna, it will never be Emma Hayes." More laughter followed. Not mocking laughter. Not intentionally hurtful. Just the easy agreement of people discussing something they considered obvious. Emma quietly stepped back before anyone noticed her standing there. Her chest felt tight as she carried the tray down the empty corridor. She told herself it shouldn't matter. Ethan had never promised her anything. He had never encouraged hope. Yet hope had found its way into her heart anyway. Outside, the evening sky stretched across the mountains in shades of purple and gold. Emma crossed the courtyard and made her way toward the small gardens behind the estate. This was where she often came when the noise of the pack became too much. Here, among the flowers and moonlit paths, nobody expected her to compete with Olivia. Nobody expected her to be extraordinary. She sat on a wooden bench beneath a flowering tree and stared at the distant horizon. In less than 2 weeks, the Moon Festival would begin. Wolves from every territory would gather at Blackwood Hall. Rumors had already spread that Ethan intended to announce his Luna before the next full moon. Everyone assumed Olivia would stand beside him when that moment came. Emma wrapped her arms around herself as a cool breeze drifted through the garden. She should have felt jealous. Instead, she felt tired. Tired of comparisons. Tired of always being the sister who came second. Somewhere inside the estate, music began to play. Laughter echoed through open windows. Life continued as if nothing had happened. But beneath the rising moon, Emma made a silent promise to herself. She would stop dreaming about impossible things. She would stop imagining a future that had never belonged to her. What she didn't know was that destiny had been listening from the shadows all along. And before the next full moon arrived, everything she believed about her place in the world was about to change. The Moon Festival arrived beneath a sky so clear that every star seemed polished by hand. Blackwood Hall had never looked more magnificent. Thousands of lanterns glowed along stone pathways. Silver banners carrying the crest of the Northern Territories swayed gently in the evening breeze. Music drifted across the courtyard while guests from distant packs filled the estate with excitement and anticipation. Tonight, everyone believed they would witness history. Emma stood near the entrance of the grand ballroom, smoothing the wrinkles from her pale blue dress. It had belonged to her mother years ago, and had been altered more than once to fit her. It was simple compared to the elegant gowns worn by many of the other women attending the celebration, but it was the best she had. As guests passed by, few noticed her. Those who did offered polite smiles before moving on. Emma was used to that. Her attention shifted when a ripple of excitement swept through the crowd. Olivia had arrived. Conversations paused almost instantly. Heads turned. Even Emma could not deny how beautiful her sister looked. Olivia's silver gown caught the light with every step, and her golden hair flowed across her shoulders like sunlight. People smiled when they saw her. Some even whispered predictions under their breath. Future Luna. Future Queen. The words followed Olivia wherever she went. Emma. Olivia's voice was warm as she approached. There you are. Emma forced a smile. You look amazing. Olivia laughed softly. You always say that. Because it is true. For a brief moment, Emma felt guilty for the sadness hidden inside her. Olivia had never been cruel to her. If anything, her sister had always tried to include her whenever possible. It was not Olivia's fault that the world seemed determined to favor her. Come stand with me tonight, Olivia said. I do not want to be alone. Before Emma could answer, several noblewomen approached Olivia and quickly surrounded her. The conversation swept Olivia away like a river current. Within seconds, Emma was standing alone again. The ballroom doors opened. Silence spread across the hall. Alpha Ethan Blackwood had entered. He wore a dark formal jacket embroidered with silver thread, and his presence seemed to change the atmosphere immediately. The room straightened around him. Conversations quieted. Every eye followed him as he crossed the polished floor. Emma's pulse quickened despite herself. She hated that it still happened. She hated that one glance from him could still affect her after everything she had overheard. Ethan greeted elders, visiting alphas, and honored guests. Yet eventually his attention settled on Olivia. The smile that appeared on his face was enough to make the crowd exchange knowing looks. Emma felt her stomach tighten. This was it. The moment everyone had been waiting for. An elder stepped forward and raised his voice. Tonight marks the beginning of a new chapter for the Northern Territories. Applause filled the hall. Ethan moved toward the center of the ballroom. Olivia joined him moments later. Together they looked exactly like the future everyone had imagined. Strong, elegant, perfect. Emma remained near the edge of the room, trying to disappear into the crowd. Then something strange happened. As Ethan reached for Olivia's hand, his expression changed. It was subtle, so subtle that almost nobody noticed. His smile faded for only a second. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he had suddenly heard something distant. A flicker of confusion crossed his face before he quickly masked it. The audience continued smiling. The music continued playing. Nobody seemed concerned. Nobody except Ethan. And from across the ballroom, without understanding why, Emma felt an unexpected chill travel down her spine. The strange expression on Ethan's face disappeared so quickly that most people never noticed it. The music continued. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across the ballroom. Guests smiled and exchanged congratulations before any official announcement had even been made. To them, the future already seemed decided. Emma told herself she should leave. Watching the evening unfold from the edge of the room felt like standing outside a window and observing someone else's life. Yet her feet refused to move. Something felt different. Not wrong exactly. Just unsettled. At the center of the ballroom, Ethan and Olivia stood beside the ceremonial platform reserved for important pack announcements. Elder Marcus stepped forward, his silver ceremonial robes brushing against the polished floor. The room gradually quieted. Anticipation filled the air like the moment before the first snowfall. Tonight, the elder announced, we celebrate unity, prosperity, and the future of the Northern Territories. Applause echoed through the hall. Olivia smiled gracefully. Ethan nodded politely, yet Emma noticed something others seemed to miss. His posture had become unusually rigid. One of his hands remained loosely clenched at his side. His attention drifted repeatedly toward the crowd as though searching for something he could not identify. Alpha Ethan Blackwood has reached the moment every leader must eventually face, Elder Marcus continued. The choice of a Luna who will stand beside him and help guide our people into the future. Excitement rippled through the audience. Emma lowered her eyes. She already knew the outcome. Everyone did. Ethan stepped forward. The room fell completely silent. For several seconds he simply stood there, looking at Olivia, looking at the crowd, looking somewhere beyond both. Then he finally spoke. Olivia Hayes has my respect and admiration. Smiles spread across countless faces. Olivia herself seemed relieved. She represents many qualities that strengthen our pack. Ethan continued. Kindness, confidence, dedication. The elder nodded approvingly. Everything was proceeding exactly as expected, until Ethan suddenly stopped speaking. A strange silence followed. 1 second. 2. 3. His expression tightened. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Ethan blinked slowly as though trying to focus through a distant sound only he could hear. Beside him, Olivia glanced up in confusion. "Ethan?" she asked softly. The alpha inhaled deeply. His jaw tightened. For the briefest moment, uncertainty flashed across his face. Not fear. Not hesitation. Something far more unsettling. Conflict. The sensation vanished almost immediately. Ethan straightened and forced a smile. "I apologize," he said. A few guests laughed politely. The tension eased. Yet the strange feeling remained. Emma could sense it even from across the room. The ceremony resumed. Musicians began playing again while servants circulated through the crowd with refreshments. Conversations returned. People assumed the awkward pause meant nothing. But whispers soon began spreading among the elders gathered near the platform. Emma noticed them exchanging concerned looks. Several kept glancing toward Ethan. Others quietly studied Olivia. The atmosphere had shifted. Subtly. Almost invisibly. Later that evening, as the celebration continued beneath hundreds of lanterns, Ethan found himself standing alone on a balcony overlooking the estate grounds. The cool night air should have cleared his thoughts. Instead, the strange feeling had only grown stronger. Something inside him felt restless. Incomplete. He looked down toward the moonlit gardens below. Guests wandered among flower paths and marble fountains. Then his eyes settled on a familiar figure walking alone beneath the silver glow of the moon. Emma Hayes. The moment he saw her, the tension inside him eased. Not completely. Just enough for him to notice the difference. Ethan frowned. He did not understand why. And for the first time that night, a question entered his mind that he could not ignore. If Olivia was truly the future he wanted, why did everything suddenly feel right only when Emma was near? 3 nights passed after the Moon Festival, and Ethan Blackwood found himself losing a battle he could not explain. Every morning began the same way. He told himself he was imagining things. Every evening ended the same way. The feeling returned stronger than before. Olivia visited often during those days. They walked through the estate gardens together. They attended council meetings side by side. They discussed plans for future festivals, trade routes, and pack affairs. On paper, everything appeared perfect. Olivia was intelligent, graceful, and respected by nearly everyone. She said the right things. She carried herself with confidence. Yet whenever Ethan spent time with her, a strange restlessness lingered beneath the surface. It felt like trying to force together 2 pieces that almost fit but never completely connected. The sensation frustrated him. He had spent his entire life trusting his instincts. Now his instincts seemed determined to challenge every logical decision he made. One afternoon, while reviewing reports inside the council chamber, Ethan suddenly realized he had read the same page 3 times without remembering a single word. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. The restless feeling had returned, stronger than ever. Before he could stop himself, he stood and walked toward the window. Outside, workers crossed the courtyard carrying supplies. Visitors moved between buildings. Then he spotted a familiar figure near the greenhouse. Emma Hayes. She was helping an elderly gardener carry several baskets filled with fresh herbs. The moment Ethan saw her, the tension inside his chest eased. Not completely, just enough to be impossible to ignore. He frowned. This was becoming a pattern. Later that evening, he found himself walking through the estate grounds without any particular destination. The sun had begun to set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. Ethan followed a narrow stone path that wound through the gardens. He did not realize where he was going until he arrived. Emma sat beside a small fountain surrounded by blooming white flowers. A notebook rested in her lap. She appeared completely unaware that anyone was nearby. For several seconds, Ethan simply watched her. There was nothing remarkable about the scene. No grand event. No dramatic moment. Yet an unexpected sense of calm settled over him. Emma finally looked up and froze. Surprise crossed her face. "Alpha Ethan," she said, quickly standing. "I did not realize anyone was here." "Neither did I," he admitted. The answer sounded strange even to him. Emma offered a polite smile. Is there something you needed? Ethan opened his mouth, only to realize he had no answer. He had not come looking for her intentionally. At least that was what he kept telling himself. No, he said after a moment. I was just walking. An awkward silence followed. Yet unlike the tension he felt elsewhere, this silence seemed comfortable, easy, natural. They spoke for several minutes about simple things. The gardens, the upcoming harvest, the weather. Nothing important, nothing memorable. And somehow it was the most peaceful conversation Ethan had experienced all week. When Emma eventually excused herself and walked back toward the estate, the calm disappeared with her. Ethan remained beside the fountain long after she left. The evening breeze stirred the flowers around him. Deep inside, something ancient and instinctive seemed to whisper the same message again and again. Not her. Not the one you chose. Find the one you cannot stop following. The question refused to leave Ethan's mind. Days passed, yet the invisible pull toward Emma only grew stronger. He tried to focus on his duties. He attended meetings, reviewed territory reports, met with visiting leaders from neighboring packs. But every quiet moment seemed to lead him back to the same mystery. Why did peace follow Emma wherever she went? One rainy afternoon, Ethan found himself searching through records inside the oldest section of Blackwood Hall. The estate library occupied an entire wing of the castle-like structure. Towering shelves stretched toward vaulted ceilings. Ancient journals and family histories filled the room with the scent of aging paper and cedar wood. Ethan had come looking for nothing in particular. Perhaps he hoped a distraction would finally quiet the questions in his mind. Instead, fate seemed to have other plans. You look troubled. The voice belonged to Elder Nathaniel, the oldest surviving member of the council. His white hair nearly matched the snow-covered mountains visible beyond the tall windows. Despite his age, his sharp blue eyes missed very little. Ethan offered a polite smile. Just thinking. That is usually where trouble begins. Nathaniel chuckled before lowering himself into a nearby chair. Tell me what is bothering you. Ethan hesitated. The situation sounded ridiculous when spoken aloud. Yet eventually he explained the strange sense of calm he felt around Emma and the growing uncertainty surrounding Olivia. The elder listened without interruption. When Ethan finished, Nathaniel remained silent for several moments. Then he asked an unexpected question. Do you remember the winter storm 12 years ago? Ethan frowned. Barely. You were 14. Nathaniel smiled faintly. You disappeared for nearly 6 hours. Ethan's expression changed. Fragments of memory stirred beneath the surface. Snow. Darkness. Cold wind. I remember getting lost in the forest. You were not simply lost. Nathaniel leaned forward. You nearly froze during that storm. Ethan stared at him. The memory remained frustratingly incomplete. A search party found me, he said slowly. That is what I was told. Nathaniel shook his head. No. A young girl found you first. Ethan blinked. What? She discovered you sheltering beneath a fallen pine tree almost a mile from the nearest trail. The elder smiled at the distant memory. You were exhausted and barely conscious. She stayed with you for hours, shared her blanket, kept talking so you would remain awake until help arrived. Ethan felt something shift inside him. Who was she? Nathaniel studied him carefully. You truly do not remember? Ethan shook his head. The elder stood and walked toward a nearby shelf. After searching briefly, he removed an old photograph preserved between protective pages. The image showed a group of children standing together during a winter festival many years earlier. Ethan immediately recognized himself among them. Then his eyes moved toward a young girl standing only a few feet away. Dark blonde hair. Gentle smile. Quiet eyes. Emma. The room seemed to fall silent. No, Ethan whispered. That cannot be right. Nathaniel handed him the photograph. She never told anyone what happened. She did not want attention. Ethan stared at the image. A strange warmth spread through his chest. Suddenly, scattered memories began returning. A small voice speaking through the storm. A blanket wrapped around his shoulders. A girl refusing to leave him alone in the cold. Not Olivia. Emma. The realization hit him with surprising force. 4 years he had remembered being rescued. Yet somehow he had forgotten the person who saved him. And deep inside, something ancient seemed to awaken. Something that had been waiting far longer than either of them realized. The annual moon blessing ceremony took place 7 days later beneath the light of a full moon. It was one of the oldest traditions in the Northern Territories, a sacred gathering where pack leaders renewed their vows to serve their people and seek guidance from the moon goddess for the year ahead. Hundreds filled the central courtyard of Blackwood Hall. Lanterns glowed softly along stone walkways. Silver banners shimmered in the night breeze. Ethan stood at the head of the gathering while elders prepared the ceremonial altar. Olivia remained beside him, elegant as always, smiling confidently as guests offered congratulations and praise. To everyone watching, they looked like the future of the territory. Yet Ethan could not ignore the truth that had been growing inside him ever since speaking with Elder Nathaniel. His memories had continued returning. Small details, fragments of conversations, the warmth of a blanket during a winter storm, a quiet voice refusing to leave his side. Emma. Every memory led back to Emma. And somehow, each revelation only deepened the strange connection he felt whenever she was near. Across the courtyard, Emma stood among several members of her pack. She wore a simple silver dress that reflected the moonlight with quiet elegance. As usual, she remained near the edge of the gathering, content to let others occupy the spotlight. Few people noticed her. Ethan found himself unable to look anywhere else. The ceremony began with traditional blessings. Elders recited ancient vows passed down through generations. Then came the final ritual. According to custom, the future Luna would place her hand upon the Moonstone, a polished crystal believed to reveal harmony between destiny and leadership. The gesture was symbolic. Nothing extraordinary ever happened. At least that was what everyone believed. Elder Marcus raised his staff. Olivia Hayes stepped forward. Applause spread through the crowd. Olivia approached the altar gracefully and rested her hand upon the glowing stone. Silence followed. Everyone waited. For several seconds nothing happened. Then an unexpected murmur spread through the audience. The Moonstone remained dark. Elder Marcus frowned slightly. Olivia glanced around uncertainly. Perhaps it requires a moment, someone whispered. Another minute passed. Still nothing. The elder attempted the blessing again. The result remained unchanged. Confusion spread through the crowd. Ethan felt a strange pressure building inside his chest. Not discomfort. Not fear. Anticipation. Before anyone could speak, a soft silver light suddenly flickered across the surface of the stone. Gasps echoed throughout the courtyard. But the light did not move toward Olivia. Instead, a narrow beam stretched across the gathering. Past nobles. Past elders. Past honored guests. It continued until it reached the very edge of the crowd. Emma froze. The silver glow surrounded her like moonlight reflected on water. Hundreds of eyes turned in her direction. She looked completely stunned. So did everyone else. Elder Marcus stared at the phenomenon in disbelief. The Moonstone had not responded to the woman standing before it. It had responded to Emma Hayes. A stunned silence settled over the courtyard. Ethan could feel his heartbeat pounding. Deep inside, the restless uncertainty that had haunted him for weeks suddenly vanished. For the first time, everything felt clear. And standing beneath the light of the full moon, Emma slowly lifted her gaze toward him while the ancient glow continued shining around her for all the territory to see. For several long seconds nobody moved. The courtyard stood frozen beneath the glow of the full moon. Emma remained at the edge of the gathering, surrounded by silver light she neither expected nor understood. The Moonstone continued shining in her direction, its radiance steady and unmistakable. Whispers spread through the crowd like wind through autumn leaves. Confusion quickly turned into disbelief. Then disbelief became something else entirely. Olivia was the first to recover. "There must be a mistake," she said, forcing a small laugh. Her voice carried farther than she intended. "The stone has never done this before." Several guests nodded eagerly. They wanted an explanation. They needed one. The future they had imagined only moments earlier was suddenly slipping away. Elder Marcus approached the altar once more. His hands trembled slightly as he examined the Moonstone. Ancient symbols carved into its surface glowed brighter with every passing second. He had witnessed dozens of moon blessing ceremonies throughout his life. Never once had he seen the stone react this way. "Repeat the ritual," one nobleman called out. "Test it again." Others quickly agreed. Olivia stepped forward immediately. Determination flashed across her face. She placed her hand upon the stone a second time. Silence followed. The courtyard waited. Nothing happened. The crystal remained dark beneath her touch. Then, almost as if responding to an unseen command, the silver light surged once more across the gathering and settled around Emma. This time the glow became even brighter. A collective gasp echoed through the crowd. Emma instinctively stepped backward. "I do not understand," she whispered. She looked around as though searching for someone to explain what was happening. No one could. Ethan watched everything unfold from beside the altar. Strangely, he felt no confusion anymore. While others questioned the result, something deep within him recognized it immediately. The uncertainty that had haunted him for weeks had vanished completely. Every instinct pointed toward the same truth. His gaze found Emma across the courtyard. She looked frightened by the attention, overwhelmed, unprepared. Yet beneath the silver glow, she seemed more herself than ever before. Genuine, kind, quietly strong. The woman who had once stayed beside a lost boy during a winter storm when nobody else was there. The woman everyone overlooked. Olivia turned toward Ethan. "Say something," she pleaded softly. "Tell them this cannot be real." The crowd fell silent again. Hundreds of eyes shifted toward the Alpha. Ethan looked at Olivia. Then he looked at Emma. For the first time he stopped thinking about expectations, appearances, and what others wanted him to choose. Instead, he listened to the truth he had been avoiding. Elder Nathaniel slowly stepped forward. "The Moonstone does not choose popularity," he said calmly. "It does not choose ambition. It reveals harmony where harmony already exists." His words settled heavily over the gathering. No one argued. No one could. The evidence shone before them. Emma stood motionless beneath the silver light, while the future everyone expected quietly unraveled around them. And as Ethan took his first step toward her, the entire courtyard held its breath. The silence that followed felt endless. Hundreds of people stood beneath the moonlit sky watching Ethan Blackwood cross the courtyard one slow step at a time. No one spoke. No one dared interrupt. Emma remained frozen where she stood, surrounded by the fading silver glow of the Moonstone. Her heart raced so quickly she could hear it. This could not be happening. For years she had lived in the background while others made decisions and claimed attention. Now every eye in the Northern Territory seemed fixed on her. Ethan stopped a few feet away. For a moment neither of them spoke. Emma searched his face, expecting uncertainty, expecting hesitation. Instead she found something she had never seen before. Regret. Genuine regret. The realization unsettled her more than the crowd ever could. "Emma," Ethan said quietly. Even though his voice was soft, the entire courtyard heard it. "There is something I should have said a long time ago." Emma swallowed hard. Around them guests exchanged confused glances. Olivia stood near the altar, unable to look away. Elder Nathaniel watched silently from the front row. Ethan drew a slow breath. "I spent weeks trying to understand why nothing felt right." His eyes never left Emma. "I thought I had already chosen the future I wanted. I thought I understood what mattered." A faint smile touched his face, though sadness lingered behind it. "I was wrong." The words echoed through the gathering. Emma felt her chest tighten. Ethan continued. "I looked at expectations. I listened to opinions. I paid attention to what everyone else believed I should do." He lowered his gaze briefly. "And because of that, I failed to see someone who had been standing in front of me all along." Emma remembered the conversation she had overheard outside the council chamber. The words that had broken her heart. "If I ever choose a Luna, it will never be Emma Hayes." The memory still hurt. Ethan seemed to sense it. "You heard me that night, did you not?" Emma hesitated before nodding. A shadow crossed his expression. "I hoped you had not." The honesty in his voice surprised everyone. Those words were unfair. Not because they were cruel. Because they were blind. The courtyard remained completely silent. When I was 14 years old, I was lost during a winter storm. Ethan's voice grew steadier. A young girl stayed beside me when she could have walked away. She asked for nothing. She expected nothing. She simply chose kindness. Emma felt tears gathering in her eyes. I forgot who she was, Ethan admitted. But she never stopped being that person. He stepped closer. The fault was mine, not yours. Emma stared at him. Years of disappointment, self-doubt, and quiet loneliness seemed to rise inside her all at once. She did not know what to say. Ethan slowly lowered himself onto one knee before her. Gasps swept through the crowd. Even Olivia looked stunned. I cannot change the mistakes I made, he said. But I can acknowledge them. His silver eyes met hers. And I can tell the truth. The moonlight reflected across the courtyard as Ethan Blackwood looked up at the woman everyone had overlooked and spoke the words that changed everything. Emma Hayes, I should have seen your worth long before tonight. Emma could hardly breathe. The entire courtyard seemed suspended in time as Ethan remained kneeling before her beneath the silver glow of the moon. For years she had imagined what it might feel like to be truly seen. Yet nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The man she had quietly admired from a distance was looking at her, as though she were the only person in the world. Around them, hundreds of witnesses watched in complete silence. Emma's eyes filled with tears she no longer tried to hide. You do not owe me anything, she said softly. Her voice trembled, but it carried across the still courtyard. Not because of the storm. Not because of tonight. Ethan nodded slowly. I know. He rose to his feet and stood before her. This is not about debt. It is not about obligation. The sincerity in his expression left no room for doubt. It is about truth. The silver light surrounding Emma brightened once more. Gasps spread through the crowd as the Moonstone responded again, its glow reflecting across the ancient stone walls of Blackwood Hall. Elder Marcus stepped forward, awe visible on his face. The blessing has never been this strong, he whispered. Elder Nathaniel smiled quietly. Some truths take longer to reveal than others. Across the courtyard, Olivia remained motionless. For a long moment, Emma feared anger or resentment. Instead, Olivia slowly lowered her gaze and released a breath she seemed to have been holding for weeks. When she looked up again, there was sadness in her eyes, but also understanding. She crossed the courtyard and stopped beside her sister. I spent my whole life believing attention meant worth, Olivia admitted. Tonight taught me otherwise. Emma stared at her in surprise. Olivia managed a small smile. You were always stronger than people realized. Then, before anyone could react, she stepped aside and gave Emma the place she had once expected to claim for herself. A quiet murmur swept through the gathering. The tension that had divided the evening finally began to dissolve. Ethan extended his hand. Not as a command, not as a declaration, simply as an invitation. Emma looked at it for several seconds. Then she placed her hand in his. The moment their fingers touched, the Moonstone released one final pulse of silver light. Cheers erupted across the courtyard. The sound echoed through the mountains surrounding Blackwood Hall. People who had doubted, people who had overlooked her, people who had never truly noticed her before now stood and applauded. Yet Emma barely heard them. Her attention remained fixed on the man standing beside her. Ethan smiled, and for the first time since she had known him, the expression seemed completely at peace. No uncertainty, no conflict, no expectations, only certainty. Above them, the full moon shone brighter than ever. The future that everyone had predicted had vanished. In its place stood something stronger, something real. Emma Hayes had spent years believing she belonged in the background of someone else's story. But destiny had been writing a different ending all along. And as she stood beneath the moonlight beside Ethan Blackwood, she finally understood that true worth had never depended on being chosen first. Sometimes it simply required the courage to remain kind until the truth found its way into the light.